Time for Wackademia, the wacky world of academia, or Wackademia, as it's known in New Zealand, James.
Yes, indeed, Wackademia. It's in full swing in New Zealand, or Aotearoa now, as they like to call it. And I keep saying, guys, that New Zealand is this great sort of early warning system for us here in New Zealand. And here's just yet another small example. Years and years, they've had this Shakespeare festival in New Zealand, and it's a competition where high school kids get to put on stage, do scenes and stuff from Shakespeare. They can dress up with their own costumes, set it in different times, all sorts of really creative stuff. But no, the government funding for this has been cut. Why? Well, because Shakespeare is part of the canon of imperialism, and they went on to say, one of the assessors of the thing said, oh, well, this has no relevance for a decolonizing Aotearoa, which means, you know, they're not even calling it New Zealand anymore. They've changed the name. They can't use Shakespeare anymore because they said Shakespeare is irrelevant to people's lives in contemporary world, which is
increasingly
insane.
they're speaking this bizarre version of Maori, much of which is original Maori, but much of which is kind of made up, anglicised Maori. As James says, this is the early warning system for Australia. Rita, we've seen this is yet again, as we were talking about earlier, attack Shakespeare, attack Vincent van Gogh, attack all components and destroy them, literally and metaphorically, of Western civilization. This is what's happening.
Well, this was always the threat. The West was going to fall from within. It wasn't going to be the Soviet Union. It's probably not going to be China. It's going to be the self-destruction and the self-loathing from within. And this is just another example of it. We've got plenty of examples right here. Yeah,
well, the Great British Baking Show is another one. Of course, you can't possibly have a Great British Baking Show without it being accused of racism. Why is it racist, James? Please tell.
Well, I think it's just sort of more culinarily weird that the Great British Bake Off decided to have a Mexican week. I'm not exactly sure what sort of pastries we've been talking about here. But, yeah, apparently so, because, you know, at one point they wore sombreros and serapes. This got the New York Times absolutely in a tizzy because, of course, the New York Times is now, you know, going onto Twitter and finding out what people are angry about rather than reporting real news.
And always with these sort of stories, I bet there's actually nobody in Mexico who's offended. It's always some privileged, white, miserable soul from New York, probably,
from Park Slope,
who wants to be offended on behalf of others.
Well, two stories which we'll go into maybe later, but Nick Cave has come out and said that he's a conservative now. That's fascinating. And Mark Wahlberg has fled California because Nevada is much better, i.e. fled the leftist state there.